Alright, we are live here on TikTok, waiting for people to come in. I think it's just going to be me tonight. I think TJ is going to be out there moderating, but I don't plan currently on having any guests, but I guess we'll see what happens. We'll see who all shows up. We're going to be talking news, politics. See a few people out there. We're talking news, politics. Talking about the rift that is starting to form a little bit between MAGA surrounding the H-1B visas. We got the Washington Post article where Joe Biden talked about some of his regrets. Well, he didn't talk about it. His aides talked about some of the regrets Joe Biden has mentioned. And then, of course, we just got what can reasonably happen in the next couple of years. And it's going to be not a lot. Republicans just aren't strong enough. They don't have the votes in Congress to do much. And they're going to need Democrats. They're going to need to do almost anything. They're going to need Democrats. One storyteller says, "Hi, Eric. Nice to see you. I recognize you from Boomer's Lives." Big G says, "Is it true Biden regrets dropping out of the race?" According to the article I read about the Washington Post article, yes. Apparently he's telling aides in private that he regrets dropping out because he thinks he could have won. And he probably could have. I think Joe Biden still would have beat Donald Trump easily. So Joe Biden probably should have won, but I said at the time the choice was clear. Joe Biden should stay in, but if he doesn't, the only choice should have been Kamala Harris. And I don't regret saying it at the time, and that's what made sense. But I also said at the time to all those people saying Joe Biden should step aside is that if you're saying he is too old and he's not competent enough to be president in 6 months, you're effectively saying he's not competent now. So why aren't you calling for him to resign and let Kamala be president? And that might have actually helped things, as if he would have stepped aside completely, let her run. And that's not a knock on Joe Biden. It's just potentially we could have done better. Love Boomer Podcast. Is any updates on the MAGA Civil War? They are fighting amongst themselves. A big split forming between Laura Loomer and Elon Musk and some others all over the H-1B visas. And Donald Trump got in the middle of it today, and he says he's always been a fan of the H-1B visas, and he employs a lot of them on his properties. Now, I think he's only in favor of them because Elon is currently in favor of the H-1B visas. But that's not going to cover with MAGA. A big chunk of the MAGA base is not happy with any immigration. They want all immigrants under visa or whatever to go. And people like Musk have said they want to bring in people on the H-1B visas that are skilled to work the skilled jobs, that are educated to work those jobs, usually at a fraction of the pay, which is another thing that would be at odds with what MAGA wants. The hard right MAGA movement doesn't want anybody educated. They're against education. All education's indoctrination. So this is going to be kind of a thing to see how far they can push MAGA and how well they stay behind it, especially with Elon being the one pushing to save the H-1B visas. But this is what I've been talking about. And I mentioned it not just in my lives and my videos, but also in the Rational Boomers' lives. Republicans can't agree with themselves. They get along just enough, but when it comes to actually legislating and doing their job, they're going to need Democrats. I don't remember which former Republican member of Congress. DBT says MAGA means make America garbage again. Yeah. I don't remember which former member of the House it was. There was one on, I believe it was on Fox, and he said his advice to Speaker Johnson for the next 2 years, assuming that they could even agree enough to get a speaker, is keep Hakeem Jeffries on speed dial, because you're going to need the Democrats. Your own party can't agree enough, and your margin is so thin that you're going to need to keep Speaker, or you're going to have to keep Hakeem Jeffries on speed dial. And there's probably going to be some trading going on with Republicans and stuff where they talk to Democrats and they're going to have to, work across the aisle. I know that's a 4-letter word in MAGA's world. They don't like working with Democrats. That's one of the reasons why they want to get rid of Speaker Johnson. They want to they're considering ousting him because he had the nerve to work with Democrats. Let's see. Haven't seen TJ out there yet. But yeah, Republicans and Democrats are going to have to work together the next couple of years. Now, I think that's also that's a good thing for the American people. It's a bad thing for the hard right Republicans. They're not going to get nearly what they want done. Social Security is going to be safe. I don't think they've talked about going after food stamps and Medicare, Medicaid. Well, mostly Medicaid. And I just don't think they get through. I don't think they make it happen. I don't think there's the votes in Congress to make it happen. Anything like that. Because they have to get reelected. I say that a lot when I'm on these lives, but it's true. Congress needs to get reelected. Yeah. And no, Trump doesn't love anybody but himself. You got a section of this country who believes Donald Trump is actually looking out for their best interests while actively telling you that he's going to do things against your best interests. He's played one hell of a con game, but he's played it so well that come 2028, regardless, I don't know of anybody in the Republican Party who can gather up MAGA. Not to the levels that Donald Trump did. They're going to be split. They can't agree with themselves. They can't agree with each other. And J.D. Vance, the problem with J.D. Vance, well, multiple problems. Depending on how Donald Trump goes out, if he goes out with the 25th Amendment or the Republicans impeach and remove him, which they could, if he gets dangerous enough, they may have no choice but to impeach and remove him because they end up, being worried about getting reelected. If any of that happens, depending on how he responds, J.D. Vance is done. Like, MAGA will hate him forever. They'll hate him worse than they hate Mike Pence. I see Old Soul out there in the chat. Hey, Old Soul. Yeah, Mike Pence or JD Vance, he might have a shot at 28 only if something happens to Donald Trump. Artie says, how much loyalty has Trump lost in my opinion? Not a lot yet. It's the loyalty, like there's a section of this country that will vote for him and he'll have support no matter what. Now, are you talking loyalty in the party or are you talking loyalty with his voter base? Because those are two different things. You're talking with the MAGA voters? Not much yet. When it actually starts to bite them in the ass, they'll turn on him to an extent. Some of them will. The ones that get affected will. The problem is he can't run for election anymore. The only thing that could happen is if his actions bite them in the ass enough that they're mad at him, come midterms, they could vote against him. Well, against people he endorses. But Donald Trump can't run for election again. So he doesn't care about the MAGA base. He doesn't care about the voters anymore. They can't help him. Domingo says the money will power it. You talk about the MAGA movement. MAGA movement dies with Donald Trump. They can't. They're not even agreeing with themselves. There's a rift forming between Musk and Laura Loomer and a few others, all over visas. Old Soul says, I was going to ask what happens to Republicans since Trump turned on MAGA. I mean, he's only turning right now because Musk is backing those visas. If Musk wasn't, and Musk didn't have money, Donald Trump wouldn't have turned. They're going to twist, like the MAGA voter, they're going to find a way to explain it away. A chunk of them will. And they're always going to be like that. As far as the MAGA Republicans, like the actual elected officials, I mean, I've been saying it. They don't need him as much as he needs them. They were always going to turn on him to make sure that they had enough, support in Congress. They have to get reelected. Debbie says Trump can turn on Elon tomorrow. Will MAGA welcome Trump back? That's the question. Probably, because he did what they thought was impossible. He beat Hillary. He beat the impossible, right? And he's got this way of his own version of charisma. I think a chunk of that is the fact that he speaks at a 4th to 6th grade level. And the MAGA voter, a lot of them resonate with that. They're not getting talked down to by a highly educated person. So yeah, I think they take him back. Because he'll feed them some bullshit line about Musk, and whenever he turns on Musk, I think I said last night in the live, I'm putting the over-under on like 3 to 6 months at best before Musk is out the door. Desner Chick says Trump plans to be president for life like his buddy Putin. And yes, Trump doesn't recognize boundaries because he's been allowed to do whatever he wants all his life. Yeah, those are both true. He does want to be president for life, but he won't. He might be president for the rest of his life, only because he may not survive 4 more years. He's not in the best physical shape, and he's not in the best mental shape based on a lot of how he talks, what he talks about, things like that. There's a lot of people saying his health is not great. So he may not make it 4 years. So he may be president for the rest of his life if he doesn't survive. But if the Republicans don't remove him beforehand, come 12 noon, January 20th, 2029, Donald Trump will be out of office. There isn't any mechanism for them to change that, short of changing the Constitution. And they just do not have the votes for that. Old Soul says, I read a post from a MAGA saying he won't believe it till Trump's post about the H-1B visas. Yeah, and that's the thing. But even when he says it, he could say it himself and they still might not believe it. How many times has he told them something directly? And they said, he didn't say that. Debbie says, his life. Eric has me rolling. Well, thank you. Desnercheck says, that's true. He'll try to pass POTUS on to Junior or Ivanka. There's no mechanism for that. The next in line is J.D. Vance. Period. 2028, there will be an election. They do not have the numbers to change the Constitution. It would take like 290, 300 members of the House of Representatives, 67 senators. And that's only to cross the first hurdle to getting a constitutional amendment passed. Then it takes 38 states. And it can take a long time to ratify an amendment. Even ones that they push through and they want to get done quickly still take several years to pass. Like the 22nd Amendment that limits presidents to 2 terms. That took like almost 3 to 4 years. But famously, the 27th Amendment limiting congressional pay and saying they cannot vote themselves a raise until the beginning of the following Congress, that took over 200 years to ratify. They started the process in 1789. It passed in 1992. Yeah, it takes a long time. So they could try to change the Constitution to make it more like a monarchy, but they don't have the votes, they don't have the states, it's just not going to happen. Lactose says Trump can destroy Musk, but Musk also can hurt him real bad. Oh, he can. The problem is, with it, when it comes down to it, push comes to shove, Musk is going to be the one to go to the wayside. Donald Trump will push him out because you can't push the president of the United States out when you're a private citizen like Musk. The only person who can remove Trump with approval of Congress is Vance. So that ain't going to happen. And when Donald Trump is sick of Musk and thinks Musk is taking too much of the limelight or Musk is making him look bad or whatever, Musk will be the one to kick to the curb. Now, Musk could do some things to really hurt Donald Trump's public opinion, things like that. But, Donald Trump is reactionary, so he's going to do whatever he wants to do in the moment. Old Soul says, question, are they upset they think immigrants are taking white jobs? Yeah. That's the thing. They are upset that immigrants are taking jobs in a lot of cases. But the jobs they're taking are ones that they themselves don't want to do, but they think should be available for anybody else they know that might want those jobs, but they don't know anybody who wants those jobs. It's just a matter of they think that those should always be available for as they think, the correct people. Kate says, so it'll be 4 years of Trump versus Musk. No. So we don't have TJ yet. Desner Chick says, I think they'll try to abolish the Constitutional Congress. If they try to abolish the Constitution or Congress, there'll be another battle. Oh, yeah. But they don't have... they just don't have the votes to try to do it. And a lot of people are worried about the military. Well, first things first, the military does not take an oath to the president. They take an oath to the Constitution. And if the president is trying to get rid of the Constitution, there's a chance the military would not side with the president. I would think a greater than, it's definitely a better chance than probably not. Trump will not turn on Elon. Elon purchased the presidency. No, because Donald Trump doesn't think that deep. He reacts. And if he thinks Elon Musk is upstaging him, or he gets too pissed about all the talk about President Elon, things like that, Musk is gone. He'll deal with the fallout later, because he, like everything else, he likes to kick the can down the road and make it a future him problem. That's how he thinks. Rob says they could call for a constitutional convention, though. Yeah, there's a thing about the convention of the states, and a lot of people are worried about it. But even if they call a convention of states, one, we don't know what that actually would look like. We've never had one, not since they passed the original Constitution. They would have to pass it. They would have to come up with rules for how it would work, etc. And that would be a whole process. And by the time they got done, they would be voting on new amendments to the Constitution, yes. But those amendments still have to go to 38, to all of the states, and 38 have to ratify it. This is a convention of the states does not bypass both steps. It only bypasses the needing to go through Congress. So this would be how you could get something like an age limit or a term limit in on Congress, because Congress would never vote for either one of those things on their own. So that's how that would work, but we've never seen it happen. So I'm not overly worried about it. Old Soul says, what do they think? They can just go to NASA and get a tech job? Some of them, yeah. They do. But here's the thing. With the H-1B visas, a lot of them are skilled, educated positions, which is directly opposite of what MAGA wants. Because a lot of the MAGA, they don't like education. They don't see the need for education. And this reminds me of something we were talking about, or you were talking about last night, Old Soul. You talked about wanting better for your kids. And it reminds me of something my mom told me, is that she was her class valedictorian. And she had the opportunity to go to college, and she wanted to be a teacher. But her guidance counselor in high school convinced my grandfather, her dad, that you couldn't make any money being a teacher, and that she should go into nursing where the money is. Well, my mom couldn't handle being a nurse, and ultimately when push came to shove, the way I was told the story is that my grandpa looked at her and said, well, you're already making better money than I've ever made in my life. What do you need college for? So, yes, there are people who look at their kids and go, you're already better off than I was. That should be good enough. Rob says, 19 states have already historically called for a convention, 15 more. Yeah, but even if they do call for it, they still have to get through 38 states of ratification. And so they're not going to be able to get all of the ridiculous, harmful things that they want through. They don't have enough state legislatures where they're in the majority where they can just push it through. They might get a couple things through if they were to attempt it, but they've been calling for a convention of the states for decades now, and they're only at 19 states. Like, it's a long shot at best. Debbie says they don't understand gutting education doesn't allow Americans to perform at a high level. Yeah, you're right. Let's see, scrolling. Old Soul says, question, now that Musk is out, will they still boot Johnson? Well, Musk isn't out yet entirely, because Donald Trump is siding with Musk yet. Could they boot Johnson? Oh yeah, they could, and they might. They may have to come up with either a new person to be speaker. They may have to, come back around to it and end up going with Johnson, whether they like it or not. He may have to do what Kevin McCarthy did and give away the farm. That's why he had the one person vote to oust the speaker. That was because Kevin McCarthy had to give away the farm in order to become speaker. Or it could get so damn ridiculous because they need to have a functioning House of Representatives that they may have to give the speakership to Hakeem Jeffries. Let's see. Debbie says, I think Johnson will get kicked out because he's not seen as MAGA. He'll have it even worse now. You're probably right on that. Let's see. Trying to catch back up. Yeah, and Johnson will probably be, he's in jeopardy. And Hakeem Jeffries has already said, you screwed us over on the funding deal, just like Kevin McCarthy did. We're not saving you. We will not be voting to keep you as speaker. Mike Johnson is in a lot of trouble. Old Soul says, your grandfather didn't support your mother. That said, what did she choose to do? Well, took her a while to get there, but ultimately she got some training in kitchen and bath design. And she spent a lot of years designing, like working for a furniture store and designing kitchens and bathrooms for people. Made some good money the way I understand it from, growing up and everything. Sure seemed like she did a good job. Could draw up and design a kitchen, proper way to place the right number of cabinets, etc. Maximize the space, all that stuff. Still ended up having a good life. But it was just that what she really wanted to do, he said no, because he looked at the reality of the situation and went, you're making better money right out of high school with a full-time job pretty much guaranteed the minute you graduate doing something else, making better money than he ever did. And that was good enough. Debbie says, Bannon, Kirk, Poole, all against Musk. My bet is Trump turning against Musk before January 6th. And then Truth Teller says, no, he backs immigrant visas, just put out a statement. Yeah, and that's the thing. They're kind of at odds on that. Trump did say he backs the H-1B visas for the skilled positions. It's the unskilled positions that he wants to get rid of. Well, he's saying that. Ultimately, what I think they do is they're probably going to make a lot of noise about nothing. And they're going to pass some regulations that don't actually change anything. And then they're going to deport a bunch of the ones that have already gone through court that have standing orders of deportation that are just waiting to be deported. He's going to kick a bunch of them out and get some pics of them being taken out in handcuffs, things like that, and put on planes, so he gets good in his eyes, good press. And then he'll claim that they got rid of, 100 times more than what they actually did, 1,000 times more, whatever number he decides to make up. And that'll be good enough for a lot of people. Debbie says, I saw that, but I think Trump will reverse his opinion. Oh, he could. He very much could. Debbie says in 2016, Trump was against the visas. 2019, he was for the visas, and now he's for them. Trump switches. Yes, he does. Yeah, he changes his position on those visas back and forth. But realistically, a lot of business people are for those visas, because they bring in skilled workers into the workforce. And I hear that they're actually that they pay the immigrants on those visas a lot less, and then basically threaten not to help them renew their visa if they ever leave the job, things like that. Which reminds me of the old company store. Now that's well before my time, but still. Let's see, Old Soul says, her honey is here on that visa. He's paid well, but far less than they do Americans. Yeah, I think that's part of where I got that idea from, that they're paid less, because they don't have to pay him as much. That's why a lot of businesses like the H-1B visa. They get the skilled people, but this flies in the face of MAGA. MAGA doesn't like education. They don't like any immigrant. And this is what I would keep saying. They can't agree with themselves. This is part of what I mean. So let's see. Old Soul says they take advantage. If they try and unionize, they'll be threatened to have their visas pulled. Yeah. But it's not. And I know we're talking a little bit about the immigration stuff with it. But beyond that, it's not just the immigrants that they pull that with. I know a couple different companies I've worked for that ultimately ended up leaving for one reason or another, that kind of had a standing policy of, if you start talking union, we'll find any legal reason to get rid of you. We'll start documenting every little thing you do. Okay, well, we think you're going to start a union. Well, guess what? You were 5 minutes late for work 3 times this month. That's against our policy. Here's your first write-up, that kind of stuff. Another company I had, it was the unofficial policy. Of course, nobody in upper management would ever own up to it. But the word through the grapevine was always, if any of the locations tried to unionize, they'd find a reason to shut that location down, leave it closed for a number of years till it boiled over, and then say, well, we're going to try it again, and then regroup. And they try to find ways against the union. Debbie says, that's true, Eric. Look what's happening with Amazon and Starbucks. Yeah, I wish TJ was here to talk on that a little better. But basically, from what I got from listening to TJ the other night, is Amazon and Starbucks are doing what they can to wait it out, basically, until Donald Trump gets in office. That way they get favorable rulings from the Labor Rights Board in favor of Amazon and Starbucks, and they can bust the union, basically. Truth Teller says unions protect workers. They do. And thanks to Reagan and Republicans in the 80s, that idea got lost. A lot of people don't believe in the union anymore. Truth Teller says corporations will do what they want under Trump. They'll try to do whatever they want. Now, certain things probably won't get enforced. I think some things will when it comes to fair labor standards, things like that. As far as like fair wages and stuff. And I think part of the reason why they'll keep enforcing it is because the government's going to want the fine money that comes from it. Old Soul says Bezos can't wait until January 6th. Strikers will all get fired. Question is, can they sue? They can try. And they can try to sue. Because there's protections for unions. Truth Teller says even government employees will lose protections, I'm hearing. Again, Donald Trump is going to try. Like they want to force return to work for all government, return to office for all government employees. Problem is, there are multiple unions for government employees that will protect people being able to work remote. And in a lot of places, there are contracts that are signed guaranteeing them, multiple years of employment and remote work. Now, I wouldn't be surprised for Donald Trump trying to walk back a contract. That's par for the course for him. But I do think they're not going to have nearly the ease at forcing all the government employees back into the office as they think. In fact, a lot of these government agencies, because they were using so much remote work, they started downsizing some of their office space. The ones that didn't have like permanent buildings that were like their specific building. Or if they were leasing out additional spaces, things like that, they were leasing smaller spaces because they didn't need the space. So now Donald Trump, if he wants to force return to work, he's going to have to go out. They're going to have to spend more money, get bigger office spaces, get more equipment, pay higher power bills. And that flies in the face of government efficiency. But people like Musk, and to some extent probably Trump, have this feeling that if you're not in the office where they can watch what you do 24/7, how are you worth your salary? That's what they think. Because clearly, if they're not watching over every moment that you have, you must be being lazy and not being productive. But as somebody else pointed out, I think it was here on TikTok, if they're so worried about watching over every minute of your day and how well you're doing, and you have to be in the office to see how good you're performing to be worth your salary, how is it that Musk can be CEO of 4 companies at the same time? You can't put 160 hours in, working. I mean, there's just barely enough hours in a week. But you can't do that. You can't justify his hours like that. Truth Teller says numbers can show productivity. Yeah. Depending on what you're doing working remote, a lot of times they can tell what you're doing. Debbie says these companies are out of control. We got to fix that. Yeah, we do. Unfortunately, it's going to take at least another 4 years before we can fix anything. But this is the last gasp of the current MAGA branch of the Republican Party. Right? They're not going to get anything accomplished. They're going to fail miserably. in the midterms, more than likely they are going to lose both chambers of Congress. Old Soul says, I work remotely. They can tell exactly what you do when you're logged on. Exactly. I mean, that's why you hear of occasionally of people getting fired for doing the wrong thing, logged into the wrong websites. You know, not watching the right videos, whatever the case might be. You know, yeah, Truth Teller says they can even count keystrokes. Yeah. Like, there is all sorts of technology they can use now to watch what you're doing on that work computer or tablet or whatever it is you're using. That they know, regardless of what you're doing. Like, I think you're actually more productive for some people working from home, because you're not getting interrupted by the 100, 200, 300 other people in your office. Old Soul says, Musk is online fighting because he doesn't work. He exploits workers. They do the work for him. Yeah. And like I said, how can he be CEO of 4 different companies and justify his pay? Well, clearly he's not actually doing the CEO job, but he's collecting a big fat paycheck plus a whole bunch of bonuses when his companies do well. Scott says, hell, Trump golfed 300 plus days in office. Yeah. Remember what he said in 2016 on the campaign trail. I'm going to be so busy working for you, I won't have time to golf. And he golfed about a quarter of the time he was in office. On the taxpayer dime, because he got to charge the taxpayers for the Secret Service staying at Mar-a-Lago. Old Soul's question: didn't he golf more in 4 years than Obama did in 8? I think he did. I do think he did. Truth Teller says, do you think the Trump rallies will at least end? Probably not. They didn't last time. He wants the adulation of the crowd. He needs. It's not even so much a want. He needs it. It feeds his ego. You know, Donald Trump still needs to. He has to have the crowd and the glory. That's why he wanted the year-long celebration for the 250th anniversary of this country. I think he wants to try to make like the Inauguration Day a national holiday or some bullshit. Like, he wants people cheering his name. He was talking about bringing back monuments and bringing back, things like that. People wonder if he's going to try to get his mug put up on Mount Rushmore. Well, no, there's not enough carvable rock left on Mount Rushmore to do that. 2, as he's talking about being fiscally responsible and cutting out government waste, how does he balance that with wanting to build another Mount Rushmore style monument? And you can't. It's all bullshit. He says whatever he wants. It's all about feeding his ego. And You know, up to this point, he's always lived by the motto, any press is good press. I think he's in for a rude awakening for what this second term is going to be like. The Republicans are putting up with him at this point until January 20th. After he raises his right hand and says the oath of office, then he's done. David says, I'm hoping they fight this way for 8 years so they can't get a damn thing done. Yeah, they're going to for the next 2 for sure. Because Donald Trump's going to want to do something. It's going to be bad for the Republican Party, or they think they can't get elected for it. They're going to say no. Or, like, right after Waltz Stefanik, why would you say he's done? Oh, simple. Republicans don't need him after he takes the oath of office. They don't need him. The clock is ticking on Donald Trump after he takes the oath of office. Let's see. Yeah. After he takes the oath of office, he is a lame duck. He can't run again in 28. They don't have the votes to change the Constitution to allow him to run again in 28. And once they pull Stefanik, Matt Gaetz has already resigned his seat, and Waltz out to be in the cabinet. They're going to have a 1-seat majority in the House. 1 Republican no vote and anything fails. 1 no. That is ridiculously thin in a chamber of 435. They can't agree with themselves. And they have to worry about getting reelected more than they have to worry about satisfying Donald Trump. Old Soul says the only thing about not getting anything done is it halts progress. It does halt progress, but even though it halts progress, it also prevents harm. That's the other side of the coin you got to remember. If they can't pass anything, they can't break anything. Truth Teller says Mitt Romney said the Republican Party is the Trump Party. It is, to an extent. But look what's already happened. Just since the election. Donald Trump and Elon Musk wanted Rick Scott to be Senate Majority Leader in, the secret election to replace Mitch McConnell. What happened? They got John Thune. Senate Republicans said, not happening. Donald Trump said, kill the bipartisan deal to fund the government. They did. They put up the bill Donald Trump wanted put up. It failed. They basically had to go back to the original deal and pass that. They've already started pushing back against Donald Trump. He's failed twice, and he's not even in office yet. Pangolo Gee says, yep, they have Vance. Yeah, they have Vance, but it's Vance can't win. There's no way Vance grabs a hold of the MAGA base like Donald Trump. He's too educated for him. He speaks like he's educated, which they don't like. And if anything short of Donald Trump dying, they're not going to take Vance as a replacement. They might take Vance on the off chance that Donald Trump does live the next 4 years and doesn't die. They might accept Vance if Donald Trump dies, maybe. But if they impeach and remove Trump, or Vance has to use the 25th Amendment, they would hate that motherfucker worse than they hate Mike Pence. like, Vance isn't an option realistically. Debbie says the clock is ticking on that motherfucker now. Nature's clock. Yeah. It is. He's not in the best physical shape. Clearly. You listen to him talk, he's clearly suffering some mental issues. Numerous health professionals have talked about the way he acts, and they've pointed out different signs about how he is. He himself talks about the cognitive tests he's taken, and the way he describes those tests, they sound like the type of test you would give somebody who you suspect of having dementia or dementia symptoms, Alzheimer's, things like that. And yes, of course they would tell him that he passed with flying colors, because it's not pass-fail. It's about gauging where he's at progress-wise. Pieces. I thought this was prison talk for a second. Just because of the gray background? Jesus Christ. Old Soul says, did you see Kamala? She made a statement saying, think FDR. Think about you when I read that. Oh, I have not seen that. But was she talking about the next person to run should be more like FDR? Well, gee, that's kind of funny, because I've been saying that. Ellis says, the people that voted for DT are the bigger problem than DT. True. Debbie says, what's Vance going to do? He's going to sit in the corner until he's allowed to come out. Then he'll do what he's told. Oh, yeah. You're not going to see much of J.D. Vance until it's time to replace Trump. He's going to have the same problem going into 2028 that Kamala Harris had going into 2024. He's going to get lost in the vice presidency, and people are going to forget about him until he needs to be relevant, and then he's going to come back out. He's going to be all sorts of weird and creepy. People are going to continue talking about him and the thing with him and couches and all that stuff. And he's just not going to have any success running as a candidate. None at all. Truth Teller says, I don't even see Vance anymore. No, and you won't. You won't. Like I was just saying, he's going to get lost in the vice presidency. But beyond that, Donald Trump wants him to get lost. Donald Trump doesn't want him around because Vance represents the future. Vance represents change later. Vance is somebody else who can take power from Donald Trump. All things Donald Trump doesn't like. And he doesn't want to draw any attention to Vance. He doesn't want the limelight taken away from himself. You're not going to see Vance until until he's needed, basically. And he's either going to be needed to run in 28, potentially, or he's going to be needed before that during the potential impeachment of Donald Trump, or to go to Congress and say, look, this guy's too far gone. We got to remove him with the 25th. Old Soul says, Trump brags about the test as if it's hard. It's embarrassing. How is it MAGA embarrassed by Trump? Because they haven't connected the dots. That's the big thing. They have not connected the dots. That what he's talking about is that because of how he phrased it, they haven't realized, a lot of them, that they're talking about a dementia test. They think it's something completely different because they don't look 2 steps ahead. They don't think past the end of their nose. Oh, Donald Trump says it was a cognitive test. Okay, that must mean he's intelligent or something. They're not thinking about it being, a test or a worry of dementia. Old Soul says, yes, she was. Kamala said that's what we need to move this country forward. And you're going to send me an email about it. Okay, cool. I look forward to seeing that. But I've been saying, Democrats need a candidate to run on an FDR style platform. A New Deal style message. They need to go back to their roots, back to when FDR built the Democratic Party, maybe not entirely, but he got the Democratic Party to have the blue-collar base, the working-class base of this country. They were Democratic for a long time. Democrats need to go back to that. If they run on the right message, they could do what FDR did after the stock market crash in 1929, and they had control of pretty much both chambers of Congress and the presidency for 20 years straight. Truth Teller said, what about DeSantis? As a presidential candidate? Maybe, but and he might have a little better luck with Donald Trump being out, but if him and Donald Trump are not on the same page when he decides to run, it's going to hurt DeSantis. And if Donald Trump happens to pass before saying good things about DeSantis, it's not going to matter. Whatever the last thing is Donald Trump says about DeSantis is going to be what MAGA goes with. Debbie says, don't forget, Vance's wife and children are Indian. Do you see what they're saying about Indians online? No, I haven't seen it. But yeah, you're just not going to see Vance. Timmy says you won't see Vance until Trump dies in office due to medical. Yeah, entirely possible. Yeah, you're not going to see Vance until he's absolutely needed. Caradwin says Trump is a con man and a grifter, but Vance will impose the 25th Amendment. Yeah. And I'm going to tie that in with what Scott's asking is, what is the 25th? Okay. The 25th Amendment is, there's a couple things with the 25th, but part of the 25th Amendment says that if at any point in time the president is incapacitated to where they can no longer be president, the vice president, with approval of the cabinet, I think, or with support of the cabinet, can go to Congress and say, hey, look, something happened. The president is unable to finish out their term. I'm taking control. And if Congress concurs, I'm simplifying it very much, but there's multiple steps there. If Congress concurs that there's an issue, they can say, okay, you're president. And effectively it transfers the powers of the presidency to the vice president. Now this has never been done on a permanent level. There's also language in there that allows, like, if tomorrow Joe Biden needed to undergo, like, an emergency medical procedure and be put under anesthesia for 24 hours or 8 hours or whatever, 24 with recovery time, whatever the case may be. There's also language in there where the president can temporarily grant the powers to the vice president that way. But the 25th does have language where the vice president can go to Congress and say, hey, look, we got to do something. And like I said, there's multiple steps into it, but the final result could potentially be, if Congress agrees, that they can force a president out. Old Soul says, that's a good question. I wonder if DeSantis will make a play. Yeah. DeSantis might, but as Debbie said, MAGA doesn't like DeSantis. Yeah, that's the thing. They're not thrilled by DeSantis, but I think the reaction to DeSantis will be different if Donald Trump is out of the equation. Cara Dwayne says we need a strong Dem leader. We do. We had one. We had Kamala. I think she did great. As Old Soul says, we fumbled the ball big time when it came to Kamala. We did. We fumbled the ball with Kamala, but the problem is she got some bad advice. I'm not saying it's the entirety of the problem, but she spent way too much time at the very end of the election campaigning with Liz Cheney, and that did not help her one bit. Cara Dwayne says we need to engage the working class people. We do. Old Soul says I agree. We need someone strong, bold, and unafraid of what the right will say. Yeah, all of that is true. We need, as the Rational Boomer says, we got to get rid of this when they go low, we go high mindset. We have to get down in the mud and fight with them. Push back. And, you know, if you would have had somebody unafraid of playing politics as Attorney General instead of Merrick Garland, who was afraid of making it political, Donald Trump's trials... excuse me. Donald Trump's trials would have been over before now. He'd be in prison. He probably wouldn't have even been on the ballot. But instead, Merrick Garland said, I don't want to look political. Sat on his hands until the January 6th committee released their report. And then, you know, he come out, oh shit, I better do something about this. And then we get Jack Smith. Jack Smith went from basically nothing done to indictments in 10 months. If they would have moved that fast initially, Donald Trump could have been indicted by January of 2022. His trials could be over by now. Caradwin says GOP doesn't care about working class people. Dems do. Yeah. Sonny says many that voted for DJT were not MAGA. They just weren't going to vote for a woman. And I think that is possible that some of them were that way. Caradwin says support of the cabinet. You bet they'll invoke the 25th. Yeah, and it's because politicians only care about their own power, and they're more worried about the harm he could do. Well, yes, I think they're worried about the harm it could do to the country as a secondary thing. They're worried about the harm he could bring to the party. That's what, you know, they're already looking at who they can run in 2028. They're already looking ahead to, you know, how much they can reasonably get done, things like that. They're not, if they're worried about getting reelected in 26, you know, Donald Trump could be gone. Bernie Sanders and AOC talk specifically about the progressive ideals Dem need to be true to. Yeah, they do. And part of the problem we're fighting is old guard Democrats don't want to let the younger people in to have leadership positions to set the tone to do anything. Look what happened with AOC and the Oversight Committee, and they ended up selecting Conley. 70-plus-year-old Jerry Conley, who nobody knew until after he got the position that he was battling throat cancer. Scott says, can Section 3 of the 14th Amendment be used? Possibly, but I don't see anybody making any plays to make it happen. Old Soul says these cabinet picks are scarier than anything else. Completely unqualified and compromised. I don't think a bunch of his cabinet picks get through the Senate. They've already said they want to see the FBI background check on Pete Hegseth. They've already said, I think they're going to look twice at RFK Jr. I don't know if Linda McMahon gets through. If they're worried about background checks, I don't think Tulsi Gabbard gets through. They already said absolutely hell no to Matt Gaetz. I mean, again, Senate Republicans know they have to go back. At least a third of the Senate is up for re-election in 2 years. They have to go back to their states and go, yeah, that guy, we approved him. That guy, we approved him. They're going to be questioning who they put in. They're not going to rubber stamp everybody. Cara Duen says, agreed, they don't care about Trump, just their own power, and that Kamala is a great leader. I agree with both those things. Murray says, major Dem messaging problem. Yeah. Dems have always had a messaging problem. One of the things I think Joe Biden should have done, and this is an idea, unfortunately, I had way too late. Obviously, when the election didn't go the way we wanted, because I thought it was a foregone conclusion that Kamala Harris was going to win and going to win big. It wasn't going to be, will she win, but by how much. I think Joe Biden should have spent 4 years doing fireside podcasts. Kind of like the fireside chats of FDR. Crowing about all of the good things he's doing, all of the things that the Infrastructure Reduction Act was getting done. Or the Infrastructure Act was doing, the Inflation Reduction Act, all those things. And just spend an hour talking to the American people every week, crowing about their achievements. But the Democrats don't do that. They let their achievements stand on their own, and they hope that their record speaks for itself. And that allows Republicans to drive the message. And when Republicans do that, they can lie through their teeth, and everybody believes it because it's the only message they're getting. Debbie says Kamala is great, but she had to choose right or left. She went for the middle, and that cost us. She did a great campaign. A lot of her ideas were left of middle, but this is where the messaging thing comes in. She spent too damn long with Liz Cheney, where her words were getting lost in the appearance of what she was doing. Same with, there was so many negative things to harp on Donald Trump for, that as she kept focusing on how bad Trump is, her message of what she was going to do, I think, got lost. And that's not a knock on Kamala Harris. It was just a statement of fact. I don't think she necessarily went right, but she appeared to go right of center by being with Liz Cheney, and I know that hurt her. Cara Duen says, we need a strong leader who works for the working people. Garland is a POS. Yes, he is. Cindy Lou says that's true. Since I'm behind on comments, I'm not sure where that falls in the thing. Cara Duen says, love Jack Smith. Yeah, I do too. I thought he was great. Old Soul says, Eric can't stand Grassley, Deb can't stand Pelosi, and I can't stand Garland. Yeah. Chuck Grassley. The problem both sides have is these old people don't let go of the poles or the levers of power. Chuck Grassley from Iowa, our senator here, 91 years old, still in the Senate. He filed paperwork almost 2 years ago to run again in 28 at 95. Now, that's not to say he's actually going to run, but he plans to. 95. We don't need a 95-year-old senator. He'd be 101 if he survived to the end of that term. Jesus Christ, when I'm 91 years old, if I'm still trying to work like that, I hope somebody could talk some sense into me. User said they might as well be MAGA if they voted for him. Betty says they need to stop him from taking office now. Yeah. I just don't know how. I don't know what they can do. I just don't know what we can do to stop him at this point. By all intents and purposes, it looks like January 6th, Kamala Harris is going to certify the election, say Donald Trump won, and he is the president-elect, and come January 20th, he will take the oath of office. I'm not seeing anything reported anywhere that anything is going to stop it, so I don't know what they're going to do. If they're going to do something, they got to move quick because we're running out of time. Frida says Dems don't get the message out to blue-collar workers anymore, so they've been lost to MAGA. Yeah, that's the problem. They don't message the right way to the right people. Like they were talking about how good the economy was in the election, and they're right. Big picture economy, great. GDP up, unemployment 50-year low, stock market setting date records almost day after day after day. All that looks good. But people were worried about their day-to-day economy and getting priced out of being able to even afford to rent a place anymore. And they missed the mark horribly. Cardwin says Garland is a member of the Federalist Society. Yeah, he was very... I had better hope for him as an attorney general, but if I was Joe Biden and it would have been right after the midterms and I found out my attorney general hadn't even started the investigation into January 6th, I'd have fired him. That's just me. Sue says those cabinet picks prove his cognitive level. Oh yeah. He's picking people that say good things about him and, people that pat him on the back. Dolores says, my hope is they stop him from taking office January 6th. Maybe. I hope, I haven't seen anything yet, but I hope they do something. Old Soul says, Deb wasn't like this until she started watching you and Boomer. You all turned my friend gangster. I'm not going to take all the credit. Power is seductive. Passing baton rarely happens. We got to take it. Yeah. And I think part of the problem is Gen Xers and millennials were perfectly okay letting the older generation stay in power and not pushing for their chance to be in control of the levers of leadership. Caradwin says Dems need to regroup. Think Biden should have stepped aside earlier. The problem is, when he decided to run again right after the 2022 midterms, he wasn't nearly... He appeared better then, and they just came off, they were only 2 years out of him beating Donald Trump in 2020, and they just came off a hell of a midterm. They were supposed to lose the Senate by like 2 or 3 seats, and Republicans were supposed to have the House by like 50. They had the House by 5, and we gained a seat in the Senate. So by all accounts, Joe Biden just had a very successful midterm election. So it made sense that he opted to stay. The problem wasn't that he needed to step aside. The problem was certain Democrats didn't have his back. He had a bad debate, and they come out looking for blood. They were like sharks looking for blood in the water. We heard for 3 weeks, all we heard in the media, this Democrat says Joe Biden should step aside. That Democrat says Joe Biden should step aside. Day in, day out, day in, day out. The media torpedoed Joe Biden. The Democrats torpedoed Joe Biden. I think Joe Biden could have recovered from that bad debate and still had a good showing. But Man, Democrats did him dirty. Old Soul says, I agree. If the slurring and bumbling doesn't, these cabinet picks do. Bluebird says, how is there a messaging problem when VP Harris and Governor Walz rallies were packed? The thing is, they got people into the rallies, sure. But clearly they missed the mark in the messaging, because you still hear groups of people saying things like, well, I could never vote for Kamala Harris because of the Ukraine war, because of Gaza. You have people saying that they couldn't vote for Kamala Harris because of, their day-to-day economy. Groceries are too high. They can't afford to live right now. And they believed Trump would bring it down, or they didn't vote at all. As far as the two wars, they got lost. The Democrats lost the message about what could happen with Donald Trump taking over and him basically giving Netanyahu the blanket ability to do whatever he wants in Gaza. And because certain people didn't believe there was enough going on from the United States with Gaza, that's how that happened. They missed their messaging. Yes, they were drawing huge crowds, but if you go by purely crowd size, Donald Trump should have only gotten like 20 million votes. He won the popular vote. Clearly, the Democrats, even though they were drawing crowds to the rallies, they clearly got their messaging wrong somewhere. Old Soul says, I hope Congress doesn't roll with these picks. They're not going to. Kerdeman says, does anyone hear me? Garland is a member of the Federalist Society, y'all. Yeah, he is. He's not. He was a middle of the road pick. The only reason Barack Obama picked him for the Supreme Court when he did is he thought there was a chance Mitch McConnell would let that pick through the Senate and onto the bench. Mitch McConnell didn't. And then Joe Biden felt bad for Merrick Garland and threw him a bone and gave him the Attorney General job. He was not a good pick, and he definitely should have been fired long ago. Truth Teller says 95 is insane. Yeah, 95 and still running for Congress is insane. Patty McGuire says Kamala had 3 months. Look at what she did in that short time. Too bad Trump had 2 years. Yeah, and that's the thing. I think what they should have done is, from day one of the Biden administration, is they should have been, because originally Biden said he was a one-term president. They should have had Kamala Harris front and center, showcasing her every day of the administration. Giving people hope that if something happened to Biden, Kamala was right there. If they would have showcased her more when this eventuality happened and Joe Biden said, okay, I'm not running, well, people would have been aware of who she is, where she stood on things, and had a lot of confidence in her, and it wouldn't have been this shit show that we ended up with. Amory says he's already acting as if he's in office. They're letting him. Kind of. But they're also pushing back against some of it. Like he didn't get his way with the funding deal. He didn't get his way with the Senate Majority Leader. And they're going to continue to push back after he is inaugurated, because then they don't need him. Jules says, hi, Eric. Well, hi, nice to see you. Old Soul says, all we can do is prepare as best we can for January 6th. I don't think there's a secret plan at all. I don't think there is either. Union workers voted MAGA even though Biden walked the picket line. Yeah. And that was really shocking. And we're already hearing about them entering the find out stage. About them not getting everything they want, you know. Like the is it United Steel was going to be bought up by Nippon Steel, and now it sounds like that is dead in the water. And that was going to be $1 billion investment to save U.S. manufacturing jobs, and now that may be gone. They're in the find out stage, and it's going to be bad. Jules says, I don't believe Dems are going to lay down and do nothing. I hope you're right. Caradwin says, not happy about AOC being pushed out of leadership. Yeah. And that's the problem. This is my one issue with Hakeem Jeffries. He's supposed to be House Minority Leader. He's supposed to be the one in control, but we hear Nancy Pelosi really wanted Jerry Conley, and that's what ends up happening. He didn't stand up to her at all. Nancy Pelosi, even though she's not Speaker, even though she's not Minority Leader, still has a lot of power in the House, and we just need to get these old people out of Congress. Age does have its benefits to a point, but you know, I keep saying this on these lives. You can't tell me we couldn't find somebody better than 84-year-old Nancy Pelosi to run in very liberal, very safe San Francisco. Doesn't make any sense. Old Soul says, good point, Eric. Our generation let the Pelosi types hold on to power instead of challenging them. Yeah. Yeah, we should have. You know, I think you have to be 25 to run for House, and I think it's 30 for the Senate, 35 for presidency. You know, I'm going to be 42 here very shortly. My generation should have already had a lot more seats in power than what we do. Instead, like here in Iowa, we got 91-year-old Chuck Grassley as senator. And I keep hearing that the plan is for at some point, whether it's between now and the end of this term or after he wins the election in 28, for him to retire and then to nominate his grandson, Pat Grassley, to the Senate. And then when he's up for re-election, you go in the voting booth, you see Grassley, and you keep checking the same name because people aren't paying attention. And they'll think they're voting for the same guy. And the cycle will just continue. Debbie said Joe should have told everyone to F off. Yeah, he should have. Caradwin says, I do not think Biden should not have run again. Oh, so you think Biden should have continued? Yeah. I mean, nothing against Kamala. I think she ran a great campaign, but clearly the outcome didn't work in our favor. So maybe he should have stayed in the race. Old Soul says, keep in mind, Democrats were fracturing. Biden stepped down to reunite us. He sacrificed himself. Yeah, he did. He put country over party, country over self. And I think all that, while it kind of worked, I think the very public display carried over to Kamala Harris. Green trees everywhere says Biden should have announced he wasn't running at least a year ago. And that there was no recovering from the debate. I think he could have recovered from that debate. I do. Because it wasn't long after he gave multiple great speeches. Mostly in support of Kamala Harris once the weight of re-election was taken off his shoulders. But still, I think he could have saved himself. Bluebird says Democrats definitely fumbled by attacking Biden. yeah, they shouldn't have gone after Biden like that, and the media played it up because they wanted it to be a horse race. They wanted to keep it neck and neck. The media screwed over the American people. If they would have covered Donald Trump the way he should have been covered, showcasing all of his gaffes and fumblings and stumbling blocks, slurred words, and apparent dementia signs, and all the times he would talk about the late great Hannibal Lecter and all that kind of bullshit, Donald Trump wouldn't have been president. He wouldn't have been a serious contender. But they kept softening their coverage of Donald Trump and highlighting all the negative on Biden and Harris because they wanted to keep it 50-50. It's like Mike, the Rational Boomer, always says. It's like when they're promoting a boxing match. And even though the champ's undefeated and you know, got 20 pounds on the challenger or whatever, and the challenger is clearly going to get beaten in 2 rounds, oh man, it's going to be close. It's going to go the distance. You know, you might see this go 12 or 15 rounds. It may come down to a judge's decision on the scorecard. It's going to be a great fight. They kept promoting it that way like they were promoting a sporting event. The media failed us. I think Trump will get less done compared to his first term. Oh, yeah. He's going to get less done because he's got less to work with in Congress. Old Soul says, we go with safe compromise picks everyone can agree on. Republicans go hard right. Yeah, they do. Old Soul says, firefighters getting 9/11 funding chopped. What are my thoughts? I mean, it shouldn't be. But you would think they would have known better. They knew who Donald Trump was. They should have realized that that was you know, a definite possibility. Bluebird says that goes to show it wasn't about the price of groceries. They're just finding out. Yeah. Jules says that's the thing with VP Trump. When the union's FAFO, Trump will be done. Yeah. Debbie says Pelosi still has her thumb on Jeffries. I'll go get the cactus. Debbie and you and telling people to sit on a cactus. Old Soul says he wasn't going to run. Pelosi talked him into it. That is true. Right after that very successful midterm election, Pelosi talked Joe Biden into running for re-election. And then she stabbed him in the back the minute things looked bad. Debbie, we might need that cactus. Bluebird says, I was always Team Biden. He was great even at the Waffle House after the debate. Let's see. Joel says, I think Biden should have ran, but Pelosi I think Biden would have ran, but Pelosi pushed him not to. What do you think? They ran Biden again because they were scared of the leftists exposing their donors. Maybe. Let's see. Even the Washington Post failed us during the presidential election. Yeah, they all did. They wanted that close race. They wanted the horse race. And that's what they got. The media was not on our side. That's part of why a lot of people have turned off the media, are switching to places like here, like the Rational Boomer podcast, like Midas Touch. And that's why that's why a lot of politicians want to get rid of TikTok. Some don't. The younger ones don't. I don't remember his name. There's a soon-to-be former member of the House of Representatives that I follow. that was here on TikTok. He was always talking about what was going on in Congress, things like that, and utilizing this platform. But the old school ones, they don't want their business shown. Let's see. Old Soul says, all on. Eric's encouraging the cactus. Yeah. Let's see. Debbie says, Eric's a real one. He wants that chocolate chip on the cactus just like I do Pelosi. Yeah. And that goes kind of with what Candace is saying. Pelosi needs to step down and a new generation needs to come forward and take over. Well, that's my point. She's 84. You're telling me she comes from San Francisco. You're telling me we can't find another Democrat in San Francisco that can run and win San Francisco? What the hell? It's not like she's Joe Manchin in West Virginia or John Tester in Montana. You know, she's running in a safe area. We need to run better, younger candidates. The Democrats, so they don't push their people out. Until she decides to retire, the Democrats will not tell Nancy Pelosi not to run. They just won't. That's why they don't want the younger people in leadership. They don't. They don't want young people in leadership because they're afraid they're going to get pushed aside. They're going to get told, if you want to run as a Democrat, you got to be under this age, or you know what? Joel says, even Joe Manchin seems scared these days. Joe Manchin, I'm going to say it, Joe Manchin, he needs to be introduced to that cactus. I do not like Joe Manchin. Biden was their best choice to beat Trump while silencing progressives from being in an open primary. Maybe, but you got to remember the sitting member, like the sitting president, when he wants to run for re-election, when he's eligible for re-election, and I'm using he in general, I don't mean specifically that it can only be a man. The whole thing is they don't run a primary challenger, typically. Not a serious one. You know, you had Dean Phillips out of Minnesota who got like less than 1% of all the delegates out there. You got Marianne Williamson got like less than 1% of all the delegates or something like that. And RFK Jr. got, when he was running as a Democrat, like got a handful of delegates. You just don't run a primary challenger against the incumbent president. You don't do that. And that's just the way it is. So, yeah, you were going to silence progressives in part because you had you were silencing progressives because of the tradition of not primarying out Joe Biden or whoever the incumbent president is. And then it was already too late in the game to do a primary because it was July. They had to have somebody picked in like 10 days from the day Joe Biden stepped aside to make sure their candidate was put on the ballot in every single state. So they really didn't have a choice but to go with Kamala Harris. But there was a primary and Joe Biden won. But the thing is, even if Joe Biden wouldn't have ran and Kamala would have run the entire race, they wouldn't have primaried her, because you don't primary the incoming or the incumbent administration. Both parties operate on that way. Old Soul says Harris was the only one who could get the funds, right? Yes. All of the money that was in Biden's war chest for re-election was for the Biden-Harris campaign. So when he stepped aside, she still had access to all of the funds in that war chest. It was like $300 million, I believe. Like, it was a significant chunk of the war of money that she could use to campaign. Plus, they had all the field offices. They had all the infrastructure ready to run a campaign. She was the logical choice. Joel says, so have you heard about President Elon VP Trump eating the faces of the MAGA group over the, I think you mean the H-1B visas. Yeah. Yeah. They're splitting over that. They are. They're splitting over that. Biden was quick enough to run for re-election, but when Trump announced, Biden was quick enough to run for re-election when Trump announced, but not quick enough to fire Garland. I would 100% agree. I mean, he got talked into running after Donald Trump had announced he was going to run, and after they had just had a very successful midterm. It wasn't his decision alone, and he listened to people like Nancy Pelosi in making the decision to run for re-election. But yeah, he should have fired Garland way sooner. Candace says, I don't think the media would have given Joe a break even if he did better on a second debate. Probably not. Because they want that horse race. We've been talking about that. They wanted it even. Because that's what keeps you tuned in and keeps you, keeps drawing in the viewers. Old Soul says that's true. Biden was too old school, especially when it came to Garland. Yeah. A lot of the old, and that's another problem with age, is you got these old school politicians who are playing politics like it happened in the 70s. All right. Well, I've been going well over 90 minutes now. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. I want to thank you all for joining me. It's been a great live. As always, I record my lives. It's going to be posted up on my YouTube page, Analytical Iowan over there on YouTube. I encourage you to check it out. If you came in late, want to catch the whole thing, that's why I record it. That's why I'm putting it up there. Hope you check it out. Also hope you check out the Rational Boomer podcast. The episode for today, for Friday, was a live we did last night with a bunch of us, including Old Soul that has been in the chat tonight. Encourage you to check that out. You can find that over on YouTube as well, Rational Boomer on YouTube. There's a link to both in my link tree. So yeah, I encourage you to check both those places out. And I will catch you the next time I go live.